Now, what did you see? Did you do a one game or one season?
I did every throw against his Clemson-Miami game.
What, this year?
2020, yeah. Okay. And 21-10 in the third quarter by the time I ended. But just to give you some basics, if you haven't seen Trevor Lawrence play, if you've been on another planet, Trevor's 6'6", he's 220. Obviously, big, strong, athletic guy. Can use his athleticism and his wheels a bit. He can absorb it. He can absorb a hit. He's not doing a lot of reading, but it was interesting.
Takes a lot of hits, too.
It's great that we had Lombardi on earlier because he really helped me lock in on what they're doing and play action. He probably represents this the most of all the quarterbacks I've looked at, where in play everything's from shotgun, but when they do emphasize play action, he'll look downfield in that little triangle area, and if that's not there, he swing pass. Throws a lot of swing passes. He threw one pick on a quick out where the DB just jumped the route, and I actually slowed it down during the break, and he's clearly in front of this receiver before he threw it, so he predetermined the throw. That's a little scary, but he's by far the most polished of the quarterbacks we've looked at. He throws a nice deep ball, in my opinion. I'm not sure what June Jones is seeing. 3 out of the 4 balls are right on point. One was a little underthrown. He's super athletic. He can make a play where he fakes a swing pass right, and then he does a 360 and throws left. So clearly it was a design play, but he completes it under duress. There was another play where he was flushed right, and he threw it on the run. It was a fairly impressive throw, although it came up a little short, but it was downfield. It showed the arm strength. He's got the arm strength, Jason. He's got the base.
He's got a gun.
Big, strong guy. He could take off and run too, and could get you some yardage. So I don't know. Is he like maybe a more athletic version of Alex Smith in his prime, with more big play ability? Maybe. He had a nice play where he changed his arm angle, a la Stafford or a little Mahomes, where he threw it under a pass rusher's arm. Again, he throws a lot of checkdowns with Clemson. There are some plays where their receivers, there isn't a defender within 15 yards. You could put a 15-yard circle, and there's not a defender around him, but he still hit him in stride. So that's important. You'll always question these college guys that don't do a lot of reading, but he probably does more than any of the ones I've seen. Big, strong guy. For me, he's clearly the number 1 pick. So I disagree with June Jones. I would select him number 1 without question, and you just pray.
Two evaluators at an impasse. You and June
What's your rating?
Yeah, the war room is a huge argument there.
What's your rating?
He's as polished as any of these guys I've looked at. I'd say he's probably about a 93.7.
Right.
93.7.
Sounds like a silly radio frequency.
Drabby, I wish you would have given him the Syracuse game this year. Okay. And then to see how he would have reacted to those throws in that game and see what his rating would have been.
I mean, in this game, he had incompletions, but they, a lot of them were the receivers were dropping the ball, frankly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying not to go out on a limb and just pick like a poo game or a really great game.
I just think it's funny that he just looks at one game, so he's rating them off that one game.
That's the whole point of it.
5 minutes.
It would have been funny. It would have been funny if he would have dissected the throws in the Syracuse game. He probably would have given him a rating of like 68.
Have his top 2 ratings been Trevor Lawrence and Fields?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like there's just so much confirmation bias. It's only natural. I don't blame you. That it's going to be hard.
I think if you watch this game, you'd be pretty impressed.
I think it's going to be hard for you to take somebody like Trevor Lawrence or Fields and put them way down.
Well, here's the thing, JP. I can honestly tell you, I looked at it with a more probably critical eye than normal with June Jones wanting to maybe think about Zach Wilson. I think that's surely based on Wilson's athleticism, who just is
sure.
You know what?
I think he was doing so much better.
This guy runs well.
His arm is as good as Lawrence's in terms of strength.
I loved Eric's breakdown of the almost interception, or was it an interception?
No, it was an interception. I slowed it down.
He's slowing the tape down. Eric's actually getting better at all of these.
Thank you. No, I slowed it down, and the DB clearly jumped the route and was in front of the receiver before he released it. So he predetermined he knew he was throwing to that guy before. You know what I mean? So that's a red flag for me. But there were other plays where, and I'm so glad that we had Lombardi on because I understand a little bit more now, what they're doing in these play action concepts. They fake the handoff, and he's looking down the middle of the field, not there. Then he checks it off to the right triangle. So I don't know. He does more of that than any of the guys that I've looked at. He's by far the most complete quarterback. To me, it's a no-brainer. You draft Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
It's a
Send this
no-brainer.
segment to Urban Meyer. You won't chop this up now.
He doesn't need it.
Send it to Jacksonville.
Well, here's the other thing about Lawrence, and I just think that I think he was. Well, I'm not going to say he was better in his freshman year. His stats were better, but he had some games in his third year that I didn't expect. So there were some games where he was really bad, and I just didn't expect that based on his first 2 years. But he's a guy who's played a ton of college football, and that's what you like.
I like that. I like guys
who starts a lot of games, and that's what he did.
Yep, I like that.
Have you seen Drabby's rating system? He wants you to employ this rating system,
I
which
don't know what
can
you're
put a
talking
little
about.
meaning to your grades.
Check the hangout.
95
Well,
to
go on a
100 would be a Hall of Famer, like you're predicting a Hall of Fame career.
Well, that's his
Nine-
rating system.
Right. 90 to 95, Hall of very good, and this is where you got Trevor Lawrence. 85 to 90, a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
80 to 85, a franchise quarterback. 75 to 80, an average starter. 70 to 75, poo starter. 65 to 70, backup. And then below that is Trey Lance territory for you.
Yeah. Trey Lance is poop, but, I mean, he's a great athlete, so maybe you can make him into something.
So based on that system, you have him as Hall of Very Good.
Put it this way, I would feel very comfortable, given this crop, taking him above all the others. How does it transfer to the next level? I don't know.
You
He's
just
a
don't
big,
know,
strong
right?
kid.
But
He
I
can
just don't
absorb a hit.
understand-
He's got
I
a
mean-
big arm.
Why don't you downgrade him much for his predetermined read? Because in previous assessments of other quarterback candidates, not reading a defense was a knock.
You know why? Because as I said, there were a bunch of play-action plays where I saw him look down the center of the field.
Okay,
and
but
if it
the
wasn't there,
play-action
then he hit
play-
that. But hold on, then he hit that swing pass. So at least he did some modest reading. Modest.
Okay, but the play action is the dumbed down version, which Lombardi said, which we knew going way back to RG3. If you think about why RG3 was so successful in that first year,
He just had to read the linebacker.
and I called him RG Screen, was because he threw a bunch of those dump off passes, and he was able, the linebackers would come in, he was able to hit Pierre Garçon over the middle, wide open, unchecked.
You slammed Alex Smith for not being exciting, and then you just compared Trevor Lawrence to Alex Smith.
Athleticism. I compared him athleticism, and I said he throws the ball downfield better. What I said, if you listen carefully, Alex Smith early in his career could run. I'll be honest with you. When I watch Trevor, and I don't know if anybody said this, he's a bigger version. There's a little Aaron Rodgers in him too, with the athleticism.
He
There's
can
a
move.
lot to
he can use his wheels
There's
to
a
get out
lot
of
to
trouble.
like about him. Now he is taller maybe than per se, because honestly, I can't remember
He is. He's taller than Aaron
any
Rodgers.
6'6" guys that were like elite world class. Like I don't know why, but
Yeah,
you know,
because
maybe
Andrew
Randall
Luck was about 6'4", I think.
yeah. So that maybe is a little scary. Maybe they have a little longer release, or I don't know.
It's weird. There's like a point of diminishing returns
Yeah.
where height helps you as a quarterback. Because for a long time, like guys who were over like 6'6" or 6'7", they were terrible as starting
Yeah.
quarterbacks in the league. They just never had success, and he's close to that height.
This is
Right.
what would, I love Trevor Lawrence, and I have since his freshman year. All right, so and I saw a lot of him play, a lot of his games. He like his freshman year when he was awesome against Alabama and they torched Alabama and they won the national championship. That was the one game, big game he played really well in. He didn't play well in a lot of the big games. All right. Now the Notre Dame game's okay. They pounced Notre Dame, but Notre Dame just wasn't on the same level as Clemson. He didn't have to put up a ton of numbers, but he was awful in the LSU game in the national championship. He was awful in the Ohio State game this year. So in the big games, I thought he kind of got worse from his freshman year to his junior year. I expected him to play better than he did. That's one concern I have about Trevor.
But you would still take him number one, right?
100%. 100%.
I definitely would.
I expected him to have – he didn't win a Heisman. I expected him to have a better – even though he was a really good college quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Don't twist it. I expected him to have a better career.
He's just more polished from what I've seen
Oh, yeah, he's definitely
than the
polished.
other guys. He's just more polished.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I understand that it's a team game, and the defense has to go out there and make stops, and the receivers might drop balls, but he was really good his freshman year against Alabama, and then he didn't play as well in those next 2 years in the big ones.
Luck didn't win the Heisman though either, Jason.
What was that?
And Andrew Luck didn't win the Heisman either.
Yeah, I know.
Two-time finalist.
I just thought that
I see
Trevor
like kind of
Lawrence-
his college track the same as Andrew Luck's. Obviously, Clemson was a better team than the teams that Andrew Luck played
But Trevor
for.
Lawrence probably was the favorite to win the Heisman the last 2 years to start the year. And then for whatever reason,
I'm guessing Luck probably was up there too.
Yeah.
I kind of compare them physical ability because they kind of have that prototypical big body. When we had Lombardi on before, he was talking about how Cleveland hooked Baker Mayfield by adapting the offense because he was short and can't see. Well, you don't have that problem with Trevor Lawrence, and that was kind of the same deal. Like Luck had that perfect kind of NFL body and arm. And
But he probably
Lawrence
had
has
20
all those
pounds
things.
on
Yeah, he was
Lawrence.
definitely thicker.
Yeah.
Definitely
Helped.
thicker.
I'd pick him. I'd pick him, and I wouldn't feel too bad. And I'll be honest with you, I've watched Clemson play a million times, but I never really stared at him and watched every throw and cared. I just watched the team. That's the closest I've ever watched him. So, I can't speak to the big game stuff. I don't know what factors in on that. I mean, hell, Aaron Rodgers has lost a lot of big games. I think Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback I've ever seen, maybe. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I just expected more, but he's going to be the number one pick, and Urban Meyer's going to have a good one, and kind of depends on who he surrounds him with, and you got to have a good offensive line, obviously. And
I'm glad
gotta
we
have
did
receivers.
this when we did, frankly, because I think I have less confirmation bias today than any of the days because we just had June Jones on talking about how he'd go somewhere else. So I really wanted to see,
We had him on.
Well, I mean, we talked about it.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
By the way, since you mentioned Aaron Rodgers being like the greatest quarterback you've ever seen, I sent this story last night, and I know Cakes is going to jump on me, but it was Pro Football Reference came up with a metric, their Hall of Fame monitor.
Okay.
And, people say Tom Brady is the GOAT, but at quarterback, Peyton Manning holds the top spot with 258 points in their scale, with Brady coming in at number 2. So they would have Peyton Manning as the greatest of all time.
That's fine.
What they looked at is obviously Super
Stats.
Bowls.
They didn't
And-
look at spirals.
No, they looked at stats. But one of the stats that they look at beyond, obviously Brady wins in the 5 more rings than Peyton Manning category.
Yeah, that's a
for
pretty
sure.
important one.
So obviously Manning only has 2 Super Bowl titles. But Manning's got 5 MVP awards compared to Brady's 3, 7 All-Pro selections compared to Brady's 3. So that's what their metric went with.
Look, you're a Peyton Manning stan. They
better
are too,
regular-
apparently.
Better regular season quarterback.
Right.
Yes,
Postseason, not close.
that is for sure.
Well, he actually, I'll be honest with you, in the game I watched was better than I expected.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yes. He was. Now I can't recall the Syracuse game or whatever Jason's referring to
Well, look,
Yeah,
Urban
go watch
Meyer's
that one.
where he was bad.
Urban Meyer's success is going to be tied into Trevor Lawrence. So if Trevor
what?
Lawrence becomes what everybody expects, then Urban Meyer is going to have a successful entry into the NFL.
There's
If
no
not,
way I would take
he's
Zach
doomed.
Wilson over him. And Zach Wilson may end up being a better. It's just such a gamble. I'm not saying Zach Wilson's going to be awful. I like Zach Wilson, but it's such a gamble.
It's going to be so interesting how we handicap these quarterbacks as they eventually move into the NFL, because there's so much talk. We've done more talk on college quarterbacks this year in the offseason than we've ever done, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if
Because,
anybody,
and obviously because Washington's going to need one,
Yep.
but it's
They
going to be
need one in the
interesting
fold.
It's going to be interesting to see how these 4 or 5 guys, in the first round, progress over the next 2-3 years.
if anybody takes Trey Lance over Justin Fields, that's just insanity. Insanity.
Might
Well,
happen, EB.
look, there's going to be mistakes in the draft. There is every year. I mean, Lombardi was just talking about with Trubisky over Watson. There's going to be mistakes.
Well, if they're doing that, they're telling me they're just going to run Lamar Jackson offense, and they're just going to let this kid carry the ball 15 times a game.
Well,
I mean,
the
he
Lamar
could be a
Jackson,
superstar that way.
The Lamar Jackson offense has served Baltimore fairly well.
Pretty good
True.
offense.
True, but it's not traditional quarterbacking by any stretch.